But today we're talking about what it means to discover our destiny, to have our destiny shaken up, that we think in terms of where God has taken us in our life. And our focus this morning is moving from being a consumer, having life sort of geared toward ourselves, to being a producer. This is kind of what God is moving us towards. Some of you may remember this picture of this president. I know it's black and white, but John Kennedy, when on January 20, 1961, newly elected, he is vibrant. And he's got the ear of the nation at this time when he said these words, and I think most of us have heard these words: "My fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." How many have heard that before? Okay, for a lot of us, that grabbed hold of us. We said, man, that's something to really consider. Don't just be a consumer, but be a producer. Don't just be about... And Jesus said something kind of similar. He said it's more blessed to give than receive. That's... How many of us would say, doggone it, that's really true. I mean, it really is better. I benefit in two ways. I in the process of loving others, I receive joy in living. And the love and the joy are the kind of things that make the world go round. That makes my life go round. This is what makes life worth living. If I can give my life, if my life is spent in love, and knowing that joy comes back from it, and it's sort of like it's kind of this byproduct. Love and joy comes from this devotion, comes from the idea that I'm not going to be centered in on me and how I can consume and what life is going to be about for me. In fact, there's this saying, people talk about kind of like their bucket list, their checklist. I've done that. Yeah, I've done that. Life is about what they've done, what they can check off. I've done that. And instead of life is about what they can give. Not what I've done and what I've experienced, what I've eaten, what I've had, where I've been, but life is about what I've been able to give. How can I use what God has given me to give back? That's what life is all about. How can I move in my concept from being a consumer to being a producer? Because when we do that, something happens in us that is where the best stuff comes out for us and for those around us. The Apostle Paul described himself this way. In Romans 1, he said, "Paul, a bondservant of Jesus Christ, called to be an apostle, separated for the gospel." I'm a servant, I'm a slave, I'm just consumed with this thing called the gospel. This is what it's all about. I'm just sold out. It's not a portion of me, it's all of me. And he said in 1 Corinthians 7:22, and I'd like you to consider doing the same thing. He said, "For he who is called in the Lord while a slave is the Lord's free man." He wants to shake things up. It doesn't matter what your circumstance in life, God wants to turn things around for you. He wants to give you the very best. And he says, "Likewise, he who is called while free is Christ's slave." It's kind of interesting. He's saying, I want every part of you to be consumed by the understanding there's nothing more important than Jesus. That's what he's saying. Nothing. It doesn't matter. Every goal that we have in life is subsidiary to that. Jesus said this. He said in John 20, verse 21, "Peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, I am sending you." I want you to go with the same message, the same perspective, the same value system that I have. I want you to be a person who is transforming others. Don't ask what I can do for you. Ask what you can do for me. This is really what I'm looking at. I want to move you beyond just, hey, how can I receive more and more, until how can I give more and more? Because that transformation begins to change what's going on inside of us and gives us the best in life. I think there's a couple things that happen. I think we receive, again, Christ's love, we receive His joy. Those two byproducts come to us in this process of seeing ourselves as producers rather than consumers. One of the problems we have in life, though, is that we've had presidents who we discovered, gosh, these guys were having all these affairs. They're asking us to do it. They were lying in all kinds of ways. They of themselves were not living up to the values that they were talking about. And we say, well, I'm going to really give myself to my job, only to find out that the people are going to fire us the moment we're no longer economically of value to them. There's this idea of I'm going to serve seems like sometimes it doesn't seem to work so well in life. One of the real destabilizing factors is in our own families. How many parents have said, life is about me finding things out for me, and so what happens? The parents then, in the process of living life, they are now destabilizing their home because they're saying it's all about me. The children then are raised with this understanding. Well, my parents say life is about me, so I gotta fend for myself, and so everything becomes about me. There's this understanding that I'm only invested so that it works for me, and that kind of mentality is just rampant in the church, isn't it? It's the kind of thing where instead of we have got all kinds of church shoppers and church hoppers, and people by and large, they haven't moved to a point where they say, gosh, I've embraced a vision. They're just saying, I am now attending this place until it no longer suits my fancy, and then I'm going to go to that place because my life is only about me. I'm a consumer here. I'm a spiritual consumer, but I'm a consumer. I'm not a producer. I don't see myself, how can I invest so I can make a difference? That's not the mindset. And that transformation is huge. I really think that this is, like I said, societal. It touches us in almost every important area of our life. It impacts everything that we do. I think this is why we have become such a litigious society. This is why we settle so many things by going to court, because everyone says I'm a victim. Everyone says this isn't fair. I was just the other day talking, I don't know, somebody about having some hot water in their lap. I can't remember where this was. I think we're at some banquet or something, and there was some hot water. They said, "Oh, you got to be careful because if we spill any hot water." You remember the McDonald's thing where she was holding her hot water between her legs and for her coffee. Her coffee she was holding it between her legs as she's driving off, and because it spilled and it scalded her legs, she sued McDonald's and she won because it's all about me. It's not about anything I've done. It's because I'm thinking in terms of about me. And this is so much a part of, I remember somebody talking about turn of the century, how some doctor, made a mistake and somebody lost their finger because they didn't handle, the doctor didn't handle. But you know what? He was a member of the community. He was a part of the extended family. There wasn't a lawsuit. It was just that this guy made a mistake. It's just a mistake, but you know what? We know he's part of the family. We know that people make mistakes. And we're not about being a consumer, we're about creating community. I think community, people who are part of community need to extend a lot of grace. I think this is one of the transforming things that Jesus is trying to get across. I want you to be people who extend grace, who extend mercy, and in the process, you're going to receive much more joy in life than if you have to make sure that everything works out just according to your understanding of how life should work. This is one of the great challenges is how do we move there, because we're so oriented toward being consumers. And Jesus' day, people were, by and large, they had to work hard to exist. You eked out a living. You just had to work as hard as you could. But there's this orientation, though. If I didn't have to live that way, I wouldn't. And so, there was this message that Jesus brought the early church, and that was, this whole thing could end in a heartbeat. We're living in last days. Have you ever thought about this? If this is your last, if I only have like a few months to live, what would I do? Would I give up all my? There's certain things you might quit. I might quit working. I might quit worrying about certain things, because I just try to make sure these last few months really I'm enjoying as fully as I can. Well, there was a lot of Christians that sort of thought, well, this is the end. It really is the end. We really are living in the end times. And so, and Jesus sort of reinforced this message. In Matthew 24, it said, but about the day or the hour no one knows, not even the angels in heaven, nor the Son, but only the Father. Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day the Lord will come. And people hearing that message were saying, my goodness, it could be any time. Revelation 16, Jesus is saying, I'm coming soon. In 1 John 2:18 it says, children, it is the last hour. And just as you heard that Antichrist is coming, even now many Antichrists have appeared. From this we know that it is the last hour. And then 2 Corinthians 7:29 it says, what I mean, brothers and sisters, is that the time is short. From now on, those who have wives should live as if they did not, and those who mourn as if they did not, and those who are happy as if they were not, and those who buy something as if it were not theirs to keep, and those who use the things of the world as if not engrossed in them. For this world in its present form is passing away. And so there's this real movement by a lot of people to say, well, gosh, why work? It's time. Let's just make the most of this time that we've got. Why bother? And so there were some Christian freeloaders that sort of emerged. They kind of like this idea. I just kind of coast until that time comes, and so that's what they were doing. And then Paul says, no, wait a second. You got to balance this out by this sense of God is not into freeloading. This is not his orientation either. Don't remember the rule we had when we lived with you, Paul says in 2 Thessalonians 3. If you don't work, you don't eat. And now we're getting reports that a bunch of lazy, good-for-nothings are taking advantage of you. This must not be tolerated. We command them to get to work immediately. No excuses, no arguments, and earn their own keep. Friends, don't slack off in doing your duty. If anyone refuses to obey our clear command written in this letter, don't let him get by with it. Point out such a person. Refuse to subsidize his freeloading. Maybe then he'll think twice. But don't treat him as an enemy. Sit him down. Talk about the problem as someone who cares. What a message that is, isn't it? That, we've got these two things going. We got, this idea, how many movies, plays, what stories about, follow your dream, don't let anything get in the way. Go after your dream. Go after your dream. And then you got that message. And then you got It's a Wonderful Life. And then he's saying, well, gosh, my dream is to leave Potterville. My dream is to, and yet I feel like I've got this thing called responsibility. How do you balance your dream with responsibility? I tell you what, that is a hard question. And I think it's a powerfully important question for us to answer, because there are a lot of people who freeload off of others to follow their dream. Instead of saying, it's got to be meshed with responsibility. There's something here. And I think at the bottom line is this. How do we love? How do we give? How do we serve? Because a lot of us have let go of that understanding that I think the central message that Jesus is trying to get across is that He really loves us, but He really wants us to love those people around us, the circle that's closest to us and expands around us. And sometimes that love means I sacrifice so that I might give. But in the sacrifice comes joy, and comes all this byproduct that Christ is talking to us about as well. In Jesus' day, so many people were farmers that He hardly had to be a stretch to have a farming kind of illustration about how life worked. And so in Matthew 13, Jesus is talking to people, and He says, a farmer went out to sow his seed. And as he was scattering the seed, some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up, and some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. And other seed fell among the thorns, which grew up and choked the plants, and still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. And Jesus then said, okay, you see this going on, but this is what this parable means. There's a sower, and when anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart, and this is the seed that is sown along the path. And I think, there's just a very simple message that I think God has wanted to sow in our hearts. It's one that's transforming, but it's simple. It's one that we need to get deep inside of us, and that is that God really does love you and me. He is really on our side. He really cares about us. He really did send His Son to this earth for our benefit. He really wants us to know that we're loved. He really wants us to know that He cares for us, that this is God's message to us. I love you. And that is a seed of His Word that He wants to go inside of us, to go down deep, because that will produce fruit. Everything else, you can take a lot of messages from the Scriptures that are going to put you in the wrong perspective of what God is up to. That is really central. God is love. I want to get that message inside. I want that seed to germinate. I want it to grow. I want it to go in there. I want to shake things up. And a lot of times we fail to get that inside of us deeply because we've got some kind of perspective on life that seals out that understanding. We have our own perspectives that we get wrapped up in. Jesus said, you know what? There's a lot of people that just will not get this message, will not allow it to get inside of them. They are because the problem is, if we really do know that we're loved, we become vulnerable people. Something happens to us that softens us in a way. This is why we have a lot of people that seem very tough and hard because they're afraid that if they are loving, somehow they're going to be softened. And we've been given this very brief period. And God says, how can I use this brief period to love God and love the people around me? How can I get this in me in such a way that it touches us at a deep level, that it transforms us, that it changes us? How can that message come down deeply within me, so that I'm no longer just living for myself, but I'm now a person that's just consumed by the love of God and His power, His influence in my life. I think I've got a slide here that's coming up. It is kind of crazy though, isn't it? How many of us have said, I can't talk to so-and-so because even though I know I have a message that would be helpful, but I can't speak to them because they're not open. They're not really, they're not going to hear it. It's closed down. They're not going to receive this message. And it's kind of like Jesus saying that's what's happened to a lot of people. The message that God is trying to get through is just like it's seed that is just laid on hard ground, and that hard ground it's not going to be penetrated, and so the seed is taken away. That message is no longer there. They can't hear it. They've made up their mind. They're absorbed in their own world, and God's saying, I want to shake you up. I want to do something. I want to restructure where things are going. And then he said there's another kind of soil. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and receives it with joy. And that really is what God wants us, where He wants us to be living. He wants us to receive this message that He loves and cares for us, receive it with joy, but if it doesn't go down deeply, it has no root, and it lasts only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. Friedrich Nietzsche said this: the essential thing in heaven and earth is that there should be a long obedience in the same direction. It's a great phrase, isn't it? That you keep going. You know what? Just continuing in the same direction ensures success for so many of us. It's not that we have not taken, it's just that we've given up too soon. We haven't moved beyond. It's in the midst of pain and persecution that we give up. If we keep moving, then we bust through that and something new opens up for us. How many of us have seen that take place where we said, gosh, I would like to give up? How many of you, on something that God has told you, this is what I want you to be doing, I've spoken to you, and you said, but I would like to give up. It's just too hard. It's just too hard. And God says, but guess what? I've called you to something else. I want you to have this roots that go down deep. I want this message to go down deep inside of you, that I love you and that you are a source of love and joy to others if you get this inside of you deeply. Matthew 13:22, the seed falling among thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. And again, we got this other picture of someone who is just caught up by worries and cares. And I will be the first one to say, I know what it's like to have worry just choke out love and joy. How many of you have experienced this in your lifetime, where you say, God, you desperately need to rehear, You desperately need to re-receive that message that God really does love you and really does have a plan for your life in it and going down deep within you because everything else seems to be grabbing hold of you and pulling you down. Ann and I were just talking about last night that we need, in order to be at the top level of life, to live in this quadrant where we're experiencing full engagement, that we're really here. If I were to ask you, are you really here right now? Some of you are not here. Some of you are gone. I mean, you're sitting here, but you're not really here. Right? Or only a quarter of you is here. You're kind of, or a half of you is here. Maybe even if you're good, 3/4 of you is here. But in order to receive the most of life, full engagement. When you're fully engaged, you're really maximizing and full engagement. Now, here's the problem. You cannot be fully engaged all the time. Full engagement all the time burns you out. You need to be restored by disengaging. That whole idea of rest, the Sabbath rest, Jesus is saying, you've got to disengage. You've got to take time to disengage as well. To let everything go. To let just the love of God to sweep over your soul. To hear nothing but His mercy and His grace and His peace. And you need to just disengage as well so that you can be fully engaged when God calls you to full engagement. You live best in full engagement, but you need to have periods, and it needs to be regular. It needs to be part of your life of disengagement. Everything is letting go. And what I tend to do is to live semi-engaged all the time. And then the worries crowd in, and so there's not the renewal that takes place. This is God's plan for us. And that's thorny soil that makes things unfruitful. And then He says, but there's this good soil, where the seed fall on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it, and the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60, 30 times what is sown. It's good soil, and it's that the love of God comes down deeply into a person's heart and life, and then love and joy are just the result. Jesus, in another illustration, John 15 says, I am the true vine. My Father is the gardener. He cuts off every branch in me that bears no fruit, while every branch that does bear fruit, He prunes so it will be even more fruitful. And created an avocado, took an avocado, you know what an avocado pit looks like? They're one big, humongous pit, it's this big old seed of, and she put it in the ground, she put it in a pot. She put it in water. Okay. She put it in water. I'm not much of a gardener. She put it in water, and then things began sprouting a bit. Then you put it in a pot, and this thing began to grow. And it became an avocado stick. It just went straight on up, and for a while it was the strangest looking thing, as an avocado stick. And then Ann decided to lop that thing off. I mean, she looked like she killed it, and it was lopped off. And now, I should have brought it in. And now it's this beautiful avocado plant. We might even make, maybe in about 10 years, there'll be avocados coming out of this thing. But it's this beautiful avocado plant that has emerged. And God is saying, you know what? You may be an avocado stick right now. And you may need some serious lopping. I mean, you're one ugly looking plant. And you may need to be lopped off right down to the bottom. I mean, some things require just a little pruning, but you may be one of those, lop that thing off, because you need some serious work on you. Because you're ugly. There is just, I mean, seriously, there's nothing much being produced. You're really into consumption and you're not into production. There's not much fruit. There's not much, and again, what I think Jesus is looking for is the love of God deep in our soul that produces love and joy. And if there's not much love and joy coming out, there probably needs to be some serious pruning. If you're not living with love and joy, then there needs to be some serious pruning. Remain in me. John 15. Look at how often this word remain pops up. Remain in me, as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Remain. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. If you do not remain in me, you are like a branch that is thrown away and withers. Such branches are picked up and thrown into the fire and burned. If you remain in me, and my words remain in you, ask whatever you wish, it will be done for you. This is to my Father's glory that you bear much fruit, showing yourselves to me, my disciples. And that it's kind of like this, every now and then I'll ask Ann, what kind of dummy do you think I am? I mean, it'll be she'll ask me to do something, and then 2 minutes later she'll ask me if I did it, and I say, what kind of dummy do you think I am? She says, well, I tell you what, a pretty big dummy, because you forget it, and every time. How many of you kind of like that? A moment it just goes, and it just, and I don't know how I can, and I'm kind of amazed that it doesn't stick. Remain, Jesus is saying. Dummy, remain. I'm going to say it again. Remain in me if you want to bear fruit. Remain. Remain. John 15:9. As the Father has loved me, so have I loved you. Now remain in my love. Let that go down deep inside your soul. John 15:11. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you and that your joy may be made complete. Remain in Jesus so that you have the fruit of the Spirit. He says, you remain in me, good things are going to happen. Good things are going to happen. You remain in me, you're going to be a producer. You remain in me, love and joy are going to be there. Somehow God is saying, I want you to move beyond just receiving to receiving so that you can give away. And when that happens, you're going to experience love and joy, but it's going to be multiplied as well. Other people will as well. You will be a catalyst so that others are going to receive it as well. This is God's plan. This is what God is up to. You are a person who's destined to produce fruit. This is God's plan and purpose. But the fruit comes from remaining. Just stand close to Jesus. Stand as close to Jesus as you possibly can. Lord, I just pray that as we spend time here this morning, that we're going to hear from you a message of grace and mercy and peace and love and joy and all kinds of stuff that you want running through our soul, and we realize that that comes when we give those same things away. That we are recipients when we give. That when we are the ones that are extending your fruit, then we receive your fruit. That when we are connected to you and then we become conduits, then we're the ones that receive as well. That this is how it works. And Lord, I just pray that we're part of that process, part of that process. And I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.